Yeah, hey everyone, it's Mark Fitzgerald here from the Fundamental Escape podcast, and you're listening to my Detox series, which I'm just beginning on YouTube only. I'm here today with John Robinson, who's a fellow podcaster, and he hosts the Never Forsaken podcast. So welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to connect.
Cool, awesome. So we're just going to dive right in, and this isn't going to be a debate or an argument or anything like that. Maybe it might get a little bit rowdy, who knows? But we both have this kind of faith-based podcast, I guess you could say. Yet we definitely have different leanings, I guess. I don't like the whole labeling thing, but I suppose if you were going to say it, I would be more conservative, I guess you could say, and you would tend to be more liberal. Would
Yeah,
that
I
be
would say for sake of argument,
no, argue.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't like in America. It's almost like if you're conservative, you have to be a Republican. If you're liberal, you have to be a Democrat. And I take the word liberal to be derivative of liberty and freedom. So I kind of come from that viewpoint. But I would say that, in other words, religious / politically speaking, I'm definitely more left leaning, more liberal.
Yeah, okay. So this is cool. Let's just roll up our sleeves and get stuck in here because this will be interesting to talk about.
Sure.
If before I start, railing against liberalism, do you want to maybe unpack your definition of liberalism?
Well, I mean, I'm probably not really well versed in it. I just
Well,
think
what
that
does it mean? What does it mean to you?
to me, when someone is liberal, of course, it's a whole American mindset is going to be completely different, maybe than the rest of the world. But liberal in my view is somebody who's kind of more for the people, more for the underdog, more for the unspoken, the cast out, the misfit. And I guess that kind of goes along the lines of my podcast with Never Forsaken, that I do bring a lot of guests onto the show that kind of fit that liberal mindset, I would say, to and not that I'm going to agree with all of them, but to at least be able to have them have a platform to tell their stories where in a more conservative environment, they may not be free to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally go with you on that. I think here's the thing, and I've been on a real journey over the last 6 months, as people who will listen to my podcast will know. Some of the conversations have taken a dramatic turn, I guess turn to the right, I guess you would say, if it's not left. I found myself, and I've said this explicitly, I found myself almost getting right into this whole left liberalism kind of ideal, like let's all hold hands and let's all be pro-gay marriage, and well, I guess we can talk about things like abortion. I don't really have a huge stance on that subject, I guess, but it's one of these things where on the surface I agree with the premise of everything you're saying, and I find myself completely for what you've just said, going, of course we want to be for the underdog, of course we want to do this. But in saying that, in practice, I don't see liberalism being that at all. I just don't. I think a lot of it, and again, I've talked to the likes of, I don't know if you've listened to some of my episodes, like Milo Yiannopoulos, for example, who's a very right wing, conservative gay Catholic, actually. Not to throw too much in the works here. And he's not a proponent of gay marriage, for example, even as a gay person himself. And people go, what? They kind of scratch their head and go, what the heck? It just seems to me that there's a lot of, kind of language policing going on, and people telling people what to believe, and, trying to define kindness and compassion. That's one of my issues, I guess you could say, where people are trying to prescribe this narrative and say, if you disagree with gay marriage, for example, you're automatically homophobic and a bigot, and I just don't find that to be true at all. So feel free to respond.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I don't really disagree with you on that. I mean, I think that's kind of like, well, I agree with you on the point that there's a lot of talking heads out there that want to make people choose a side. And I don't think that you necessarily have to choose a side. And like you said, if you might be somewhat liberal, but against gay marriage, and like now all of a sudden the labels come and the name calling, and it's like, I don't know why people just can't be sometimes at a point where maybe their mind's made up and they're just against it, and then that's okay. Or kind of in my case, my mind and my theology is continually evolving. And that's not okay with some people. It's like,
yeah.
like I'll bring up the interview with Kevin Garcia I had. He's he's a gay man that's a writer, and we had a great conversation, and was probably really the first in-depth conversation I've had with a homosexual man. And right away I was being labeled, gay lover and this and that. And I'm like, hey, listen, man, I'm just like, my mind is still not made up on everything, but I'm being open-minded.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, Mark, it seems like sometimes you're not gonna, you try to take somewhat of a stance for yourself, you're gonna get attacked by both sides.
Yeah, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
So what are you supposed to do with that?
Well, it's interesting. I totally. This is getting into some interesting territory, because I wrote a blog recently about the idea of being in process. The idea that you don't have to come to a definitive position on something on every issue. I don't have to have a position on every topic in the world. And I think, again, what I see on the left in many cases is this prescribed narrative that love and compassion looks like A, B, and C, looks like being pro this, anti this, blah blah blah. So it's like trying to tell somebody what love is, right? Which is, good luck with that. I don't know. I guess I don't imagine this turning into a full on debate or an argument, because you're a pretty passive, calm, collected guy. But I think it's interesting, and I think there's a real danger in a lot of these ideals that seem to be on the surface very compassionate and very loving. And when you start to somewhat disagree with them, you kind of incur the wrath of these ideas, and it gets pretty nasty sometimes. And I guess that happens from both sides. And again, I totally resonate with what you said. It's not that you have to pick a side. Just because I have problems with liberalism on the left, it doesn't mean I peg myself as a conservative or a right wing. So I think this is half the problem, isn't it? That people are trying to tell our story. People are trying to say, this is who you are. This is what you believe. And, I don't know. It's interesting. I know we can get into things. The controversy, if you will, I suppose, of, you did that interview with the likes of, say, Jennifer Crumpton, who's a feminist unapologetically. Whereas I was invited to talk with her, and I decided I didn't want to, because I don't espouse the ideals of feminism at all. I think they're dangerous. I'm quite explicit about it. I think they're not helping women or men. I think that when you and again, I think when you get into I think this is half the problem is with liberalism, is it just says, this, A, B, and C is what it means to be a kind person, and don't look at the facts, don't study the numbers, don't actually research, just take our word for it. And I think when I could easily send you a couple of links on YouTube that would kind of blow your mind in regards to what's actually going on under the name of the likes of feminism, for example. And it's terrible, to be quite blunt.
Well, but so here's the theme of your show is toxic. And I think that in an extreme like that, there's a certain toxicity that needs to be avoided. And I think in an extreme in the other way needs to be avoided. Now, see, for me, I came from that extreme right kind of, extreme right view that was a lot more very, very, say, anti-feminist, but even to the point where I say anti-woman in a lot of ways. I was just going to say,
I'm glad you clarified, because there is a difference between being anti-feminist and anti-woman. And this is half the problem, because people say, and again, I don't want to rail too much on this feminism topic, because I've done a whole podcast on it in some respects. I mean, look, to just give the listeners a bit of context, because I think people will listen to this and go, why is he against feminism? What's going on? I feel like I should probably cover myself here. So I interviewed, there's a upcoming, it's actually on YouTube already, the rough cut of the episode, but I interviewed a girl named Lauren Southern, who's a journalist, a political activist, I guess you could say, in Canada, who's completely anti-feminist. She's not associated with feminism whatsoever. She goes to these, I'm not sure if you're familiar, they have what they call slut walks, where basically a whole bunch of women and men, younger typically, walk around in their underwear protesting what they call rape culture. So they're basically saying that we live in a rape culture in the West, that that the victims always get blamed and things like that. And here's the deal, and we're getting into some sensitive subjects here, obviously, when we talk about things like sexual assault and things like that. It's not an easy subject to talk about. And of course, people are going to want to fall on the sides of the victims, absolutely. But when you see how far, how broad the definitions of assault and things are going, they're saying, a woman getting wolf whistled is the same as rape. And I'm like, well, excuse me, no, it's not. So it's these liberal ideologies. And I use an extreme example on purpose to highlight the point that, these liberal kind of platitudes and ideals that are trying to prescribe what love is actually doing damage to actual victims.
Yeah, that may be true. I don't know. See, I don't know a lot about the extremist viewpoint, so I mean, I'm just being honest with that.
No. Look, that's fine. And I'm throwing these things at you, hopefully on the spot, to maybe kind of jolt some call to action here, because there is something really wrong going on. And yes, there's problems on the left, and yes, there's problems on the right. One of the things I really like, this guy Milo Yiannopoulos, who I spoke with, one of the things he says, which I love, is you can't solve a problem if you lie about it in your first sentence, right?
Sure,
I think that's
that
a pretty
makes sense.
easy thing to agree with. So you've got these statistics that are being spouted on college campuses, for example, that 1 in 4 women on a college campus will be sexually assaulted. It's just a lie. It's not true. Those statistics are not true. People do get assaulted. Absolutely. That's not deniable at all. But those statistics are just not true, to be honest. So and one of the things I like, he says, which I think we can probably dive in a little bit deeper with this concept, which is that liberals are all about narrative over fact. So there'll be some fake rape allegation will be made, and it becomes clear that it's not true. But liberals will go, well, at least we're talking about it. And it's like, well, no, you're hurting people's lives because of a lie.
Well, and that's kind of where, I don't put myself, that's why I say I hate that label of a liberal. I think my mindset may be more liberal, open-minded, but I never really just immediately jump into anyone's viewpoint or anyone's stance. And, I tend to try to, if I'm interested in a topic, I will research it to death. Other topics that I'm not so interested in, I'll kind of look around and just get a general consensus, and maybe it goes on the back burner for a little while. But see, I think as men, I think it's hard for us to, first of all, it's hard for us to break into that conversation anyway, because we're not women. And the second,
well, this is the whole thing. You get accused of mansplaining.
So I mean, we need to sometimes, I think, listen before we just start giving our opinions.
Well,
and maybe try to
but we're talking
anger a little.
What's that?
Try to hear through the anger a little. I mean, even if a really extreme feminist is, and let's face it, and even when I talked to Jennifer, it was either Jennifer or my interview with Jory Micah, even they admit there's the really, really extreme feminine, the really far extreme, and they both, talked about they avoid that extreme as well.
This is half the issue, though, and this goes into other realms as well, where you've got, this is half the problem, where you've got the moderates in the middle, who are the silent majority. And you're right. In regards to feminism, you've got these extreme people on the left who are crazy, like batshit crazy, to be blunt. There's crazy things going on. There's professors on college campuses who are losing jobs over, saying something wrong in an email or a tweet, or, it's just nutty. It's absolutely nutty, and it's just hurting people. And, you've got someone who can sit in the middle and go, well, I'm not one of those extremes. It's like, but you're sitting by and you're not really questioning them. That's what, this girl Lauren Southern was kind of saying to me, well, yes, it's a minority that's on the left that's extremely crazy, but these are the ones that are having a voice and actually changing policy, right up to the point where you've got your president quoting some of these statistics that are lies. So
I don't think it's that we're silent, though. I mean, it's like silent may not be the good word. The thing is, I mean, we're talking about one issue, and I mean, there's how many various issues that we could get into. I lack the time to be able to get into so many issues, I guess. And to say that I'm not impacting world change, perhaps, but I'm raising my son to, I got a 16-year-old son whose hormone levels are through the roof. And it's like, I got to teach him, this is how you treat women. You treat them with respect, and but at the same time, you don't take shit from them in this way. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean not to allow him to grow up to be somebody who's manipulated and controlled as well. So
well, no, that's good.
I guess that's my contribution to it.
See, now I know I'm talking to someone who has reason. Well, not necessarily it's about reason, but it's when you're talking about love. You're a father, you've got a kid, obviously, like you say. It's a huge thing, and I think I mean, I just wonder sometimes, like you said, you're a person who does want to look at the facts and the details. Many people aren't. And I think this is half the issue, where you've got someone who can get up on a podium or on a podcast or a stadium, whatever, and kind of spout these ideals. And everyone goes, well, how can you argue with that? What they've said is loving and kind and compassion. Of course, we should be nice to these minorities or this or that. But it's like, again, it's people trying to prescribe what love is. And I think, again, this ties in well with this theme of my Detox series, because I'm sick and tired of people being told that they're not loving because they don't agree with policy A, B, or C, and they don't fit this narrative. I think it's terrible. It's something that I do feel genuinely passionate about. Because it's terrible when people are being told you're not loving because you don't agree with this, or this, So, and again, when you come into the realm of Christianity, it's a hard one because, again, I mean, look, let's be honest. Most evangelical Christians are not talking about feminism. They're talking about original sin and, resurrection and the atonement and, they're talking theology, right? So this is half the problem, and this is the conversation I want to stir up here, because I think it's terrible that the churches are sitting by having these pointless debates over theology and doctrine. And the world is just going to shit over these stupid policies and things that are changing, and nobody's really wanting to talk about it.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that, especially with the theology thing. And I know that's why I'm not committed anywhere, because it's the same things all over again that I don't have the answers to. And I'm speaking to the theology side. So it's like, we're going to sit and debate this stuff all day. But I kind of given up debating, though. So
yeah. Look, I just want to
I'm beat down by it, I guess. I guess that's kind of the toxicity.
I did not
element.
mean for the topic of feminism to come up on this podcast. I need to be explicit about that. But I just want to hit the point home on a serious note, because there are some serious points to be made. For example, these feminists have, they celebrate Women's Day, apparently, on a college campus. They have like one day a year where they call it Women's Day, and it's all, liberation and freedom and, great, fantastic, high five, But these group of men wanted to, basically do the same thing and celebrate Men's Day and talk about mental health issues for men and some of these issues, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the suicide rate of men is at an all-time high at the moment. It's really bad. And basically there's a particular college campus where these feminists kicked up such a stink about this idea of Men's Day that they postponed it. They did they cancelled it essentially, and on the same day they were meant to have this men's day, one of the young college kids, men, committed suicide.
Wow, it's sad.
So this was something that guy Milo talked about. He actually wrote an article about it. And he said, people accused him of being opportunistic, but he said, I think it needs to be said. And this is the thing, and this is something I want to dive into too, is the subject of empathy, because, you could watch any number of clips of this guy Milo Yiannopoulos on YouTube and think this guy is, railing against women, he's anti-feminist and blah, blah. But I talked to him myself. He was on my podcast, and I think he is one of the most empathetic people I know, and he is actually interested in the truth and the facts and what's actually happening. And again, he's talking about these sensitive subjects that nobody seems to want to talk about, like male suicide, for example. You've got these ideas where feminists are complaining because, there's not enough women in the sciences and blah, blah. And he's like, well, nobody's complaining because all garbage men are men, There's this underclass of males that nobody wants to talk about, that is this inconvenient truth and nobody wants to deal with. And I think, you talked about the whole never forsaken idea of this, the underdog and the underclass. And, I think a lot of these people that are being heralded in the world today, in the Western world, as so-called victims are really actually the oppressors.
Yeah, maybe that's true to some degree. I know it's probably something I would avoid on my show. I think, you want to, you got to still, I think, find that middle ground, because you've got those extremes that, Milo's talking about that. And that's pretty tragic, what happened with that guy. It's also tragic that if this men's group wasn't allowed to have whatever event they wanted to have, I think, not to say you got to make both sides happy, but we've got to compromise to some degree. I guess I don't, if we're just talking about, just only because we're talking about feminism, but it's like, I think
certainly kicked up the conversation.
I don't know much about it. So, that's, it's like,
this is half the point, isn't it? And I appreciate it.
But I'm saying this, my view has definitely become more egalitarian as far as equality.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now, because I've seen, and in talking with women, I've seen the mistreatment that they've had at the hands of their husbands or at the hands of pastors. And okay, so I'm kind of only at that level in my experience points. Let's say
I can go
you know
with
what
you
I'm
on,
saying?
I can go with you on some of this stuff. Absolutely. It's funny. I actually just did my first episode of Detox is actually with my mum. Funny enough, so I talked to my mum, and we were discussing, what it's like growing up in the church as a family and things like that. And it was actually quite an amazing conversation, to be honest. And I was bringing up the point of, being in that sort of church world. It is a man's world. Its theology is, done by a man and things like that. And, you've got the likes of Jennifer Crumpton, who is, as a woman, who is, diving into theology. And you know what? There's a part of me that thinks, great, that's fantastic. So I think I need to say a few positives here. There is some good and needed things happening. But again, I do refer back to that quote that says you can't solve a problem when you lie about it in your first sentence. And the issue is not saying this issue is more important than this. That's not the issue here. The issue is going, are we talking about the facts? Are we talking about the truth? You know what I'm saying?
Well, but do you think that's not the majority? I don't think. Those people that are extreme and they're coming out with, they're starting their sentences with lies.
No, you're
maybe
right.
It's getting
No.
I don't think it's the majority.
No, it's not. It's not. But it's the loud left, and it's this small minority, absolutely, but they're changing policy. As I said earlier, you've got your president who is quoting...
Well, they're not changing Christian policy, though. So,
what's Christian policy? I don't even know what that means.
Well, what I'm saying is this: I had a talk with Preston Sprinkle earlier today, and we were talking about the gun thing, and that's a whole nother issue. But it's like, he says when you accept Christ as your savior, and that's your policy. The Sermon on the Mount, that's what we were discussing.
Well, but how? Let's get real here, and this might, let's get back into theology a little bit. But the Sermon on the Mount, fantastic in theory, but how many people are actually employing, this let's bring heaven to earth, forgive your enemies, turn the other cheek. I mean, this is the stuff, isn't it? This is what I find interesting, because this is what I feel like I nearly got absolutely sucked into, was all this liberal nonsense, if I can be quite blunt, because I don't want to pretend that I'm more empathetic towards things where I'm actually not. I don't want to, not be transparent. But it's having these prescribed ideas that say, this is love, this isn't love. As opposed to actually rolling up our sleeves and diving in and asking the hard questions. What does it mean to love? What does it mean? This is, where I sort of want to take these conversations. What does it mean to be compassionate and to address some of these issues? Because for the most part, when it comes to the church, as I say, they've got their head up their ass. Nobody's talking about these issues at all.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, even that mindset evolves over time too, because I mean, you don't have to go too far back to see the church burning witches, and so we've evolved quite a bit from that. I guess we got that going for us.
Yeah. I just feel like, and I feel like we've been sold a lie. I do. I really feel like we've been sold this massive lie. And there's this loud liberal, all the media basically in America is left. It's all left. And it's this,
Well, except for the media that's given Donald Trump all kinds of attention.
Yeah, let's get Trump 2016. Let's talk about that.
No, let's not.
Well, no, let's talk about these taboo subjects, politics, religion, why not, I mean, it's funny because Milo actually does talk about Donald Trump, and he said explicitly, he's like, do I want him in the White House? Not really. But he said he's saying things. This is the point, isn't it? And to put context, as I say, I'm talking as someone who's completely removed from American culture. But I think what he says is the appeal of someone like Donald Trump is he's cutting through all this PC bullshit, and he's saying things that you're not supposed to say. Whether he's right on everything, that's a different conversation, But when you get to a point, this is the whole kind of leftist language policing of you can't say that, and you can't speak against this minority and that, and it gets crazy. America from the outside doesn't seem to believe in free speech anymore.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that all the way, because we'll bring it back to the old WWJD thing, and I mean, Jesus ruffled feathers, and he was definitely not politically correct, but I don't know, man. I just think that not always everything that we say or everything we argue about it has to be. Some things perhaps, and I guess maybe it's just a matter of what you're passionate about. I don't know.
Here's something you might find interesting. So it's just a shameless plug for my other series. So I'm doing this belief series at the moment with this guy Lucas, who's an atheist. And I think it was on our second episode. We've done 2 episodes so far. He started talking about Jesus. And I said to him, what you've just said is going to blow Christians' minds, because he is an atheist who doesn't actually believe at this point in time that Jesus existed, yet he talks about Jesus' message with more compassion and empathy than any Christian I've just about ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I know several people like that.
What do you do?
Amazing.
What do you do with that? So I think there's something going on here. There's something going on. There's a stir. There's a shift that's happening, where I think people are tired. People are tired of being told that they're loving or unloving. They're tired of being told that they're racist and sexist and homophobic, and they're just tired of it. They're absolutely tired of being told, had these judgments made on them about their character. It's nothing to do with the gospel. It's nothing to do with Jesus, and quite frankly, it's not liberating at all.
Well, to some degree, but I mean, what is a person's where I live, it's very, it's the Bible Belt of the United States, and there's a lot of racism here. And,
of course,
I call it out when I see it. So, are people tired of me saying they're racist? I don't really
I've
care.
never heard you say that once, but to be honest.
No. But well, yeah, go to work with me. So, but they, and it's no indictment. I mean, a lot of the people that I have conversations with, they're good people. Why do they not want to hear they're racist? Why? Because they're unwilling to even have an open mind about something.
Here's the thing. If this is a point, and I talked about this with Gavin McInnes, who's the he's the co-founder of Vice Media, who's quite a big deal back in the day. He's becoming sort of back into popularity again now with a lot of these shifting things going on. But, he basically said there was a study that was done that basically is sort of asserted this idea that what they found was that when people are confronted with data that goes against what they currently believe, they become more steadfast in their beliefs. They become more adamant that what they believe is the right thing. And I think if you just confront someone head on and say, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a bigot, it's like, you're not going to change those people.
No, you're probably right in that.
Yeah. I am right.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't mean it doesn't have to be said. And I'm not saying it's going to be like my soapbox that every time I hear something that's racist, I'm like, that's racist. That's racist.
Here's what I think, and I want to tie this back to Jesus because I really do, because I find Jesus compelling, for whatever reason. Sometimes I'm just like, I just do. I think Jesus...
Can't imagine why.
But here's what I think is brilliant about Jesus. Jesus didn't walk around to the disciples. Jesus nowhere in the gospel says, don't be racist, don't be sexist, don't be homophobic, right? He says, he tells stories and parables and subversive stories, and he gets under your skin, and he makes you think and engage with your life. And it's this third way, isn't it? It's this third way that's nothing to do with telling people they're right or telling people they're wrong. It's this kind of underlying question of what does it mean to love? What does it mean to serve? What does it mean to forgive? He doesn't give you the answers necessarily, and I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's like, well, if option A is the loving path and option B isn't, then I get told, hey, go down option A, take road A, whatever. That's loving. Is that really loving, or am I just being told what to do?
No, but you bring up a good point with the asking questions. I mean, Jesus didn't answer many questions at all, but he rather answered. He didn't answer questions, but he usually would answer a question by asking a question.
Yeah, what do you make of it? Rob Bell talks about this in his book, Love Wins. Like, Jesus says, what do you make of this? Who do you say I am? There's this very mysterious thing that I think we've lost. And I think, again, I talked to, say, Shane Hipps about this idea. I said to him, was there a moment in the church where it just completely lost all value for mystery and wonder, And again, I think this is half the thing that annoys me about, maybe it's the left and the right that are both doing, I guess maybe perhaps, but I don't want anybody to tell me the way. I don't want anybody to tell me the answers. I want to figure this shit out for myself, and I think this is half the thing. I think this is the pushback. And, look, I have genuine concerns. Some of these people that I've talked to on my podcast would profoundly disagree with some of the paths that I've gone down in the directions I've taken. And I'm like, I'd like to get these people back on my podcast again. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe they won't want to talk to me again,
that whole being told what to believe and not figuring out for yourself, I think that's the reason why neither one of us are in church right now. It's 90% of, especially it's like 90% of the reason of my leaving the Catholic Church. And I'm not railing on the church. I am seriously answering your question, but I mean, they've got the Bible, and then they've got the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which is basically, what does the Catholic Church believe about, fill in the blank? You can look it up and believe it. Now, when you get accepted into the Catholic Church, it's almost a swearing-in ceremony where you make a public statement that you believe, accept, and follow every single thing that the Catholic Church teaches and preaches. And, I did that, but then it wasn't long after that. I'm like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. And my mentor would be like, listen, you need to get your head out of the equation. And, you need to, he basically told me to stop thinking about it. and to just submit. And I said, that was like, no, okay, here we go. This is evangelicalism all over.
Well, but this is half the trap, though. Not to kind of entrap you in your own words, but this is the whole problem that people fall into on the left, because the left becomes so appealing to those who have been told submit, submit, submit. But you don't have to go too far into liberalism to find out that there's a whole bunch of there's some rules there as well. It's not, you know what I mean? Like it's submitting to a different ideology, essentially.
Well, I belong to a Facebook group that's they're a Christian leftist group, and so just follow. I kind of do it to follow the news and whatnot. And they you talk about abortion, and not that we're getting into this whole thing, but
no taboo subjects. It's fine. That's one of the
Christian
rules.
This Christian left page has a stance on abortion, and they basically come out and said, what's that?
What's their stance?
They're basically, to say that it's a woman's right, and if you speak against it, they'll basically kick you off the page.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so it's
they're
like,
allowed
okay,
to murder their children. What are you talking about?
I don't. Yeah, me personally, I don't think somebody should get an abortion, but
it's murder. Let me just call it what it is.
I also don't want to say that it should be my decision or it should be legislated. So here I am taking that moderate road again, but when you have it, I see your point in that, like, if I go on that page and I start giving my views, I'm going to
start disagreeing with them. This is a challenge.
So I don't do that because I like the page for 75% of the material that comes out I can get into. But again, like you said, here's the other side of telling me what to believe, and I don't do that either. So.
Look, this is all the feelings nonsense that you can't get into. I mean, look, you brought up abortion. I'm happy to talk about it. I think abortion is murder. I have no problem saying that, point blank. I don't care. Disagree with me. Do what you want. And it's this whole thing of, oh, what if you're talking to someone's had an abortion and you have to be sensitive? It's like, well, of course. I'm not being a jerk, but if you want to end the life of a child inside your womb, do it. That's your choice, but do it knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, but here we are, two men talking about female issues again.
No, we're two human beings. No, let me correct you there. We're two human beings talking about human life.
I understand that. I think for me, that's just been another one of those, it's just another issue I'm not super, super vocal about. Because I know, choice. Yeah, I know where I'm
pro your choice to be not vocal about it.
Yeah. But there's other things I'm very vocal
I call bullshit on that, though, because I think this is the whole thing of, like, you're a man, you can't talk about it. Nonsense. That's absolute nonsense.
Oh, I'm just busting your chops. I'm just
No, but I'm saying
you can talk about it. I'm just saying the irony of it.
I love that you said busting your chops. No, this is
we got to talk about guns, man. That's a man issue.
Well, it's they're both both tools of murder are involved, I guess, but but this is the thing, this is the nonsense. We can move away from sensitive subjects if people don't like it, but this whole thing of, like, you can't say that, you can't talk about, going back to Milo again, he got stopped in a debate for using the term kooky liberals, and the guy goes, you can't say it, and he goes, what? He goes, you can't say kooky, and he goes, I can't say kooky. It's just like,
yeah, what? I'm not. You can say whatever you want. I'm not that guy to say can't say this, can't say that.
Yeah.
It's just certain things I don't. And like I mentioned before, a lot of it just goes for the sake of time. Milo is single as well. He's not married. You said he's he's a
promiscuous gay man.
Okay. So well, we'll leave the promiscuous part.
That's why
I'm not going to judge him for that, but it's a time thing too, man. It's like, see, I joked with you once saying you must not be married, and kind of more joking along the time thing. I don't have time to, when Paul said in Scripture that, he would say to remain unmarried or be married, and he said, I prefer to remain unmarried because when you're married, you've got to take care of your wife and your family. And I guess, I don't know, man, you just don't have a lot of time to be passionate about every issue, I guess.
Well, again, maybe this is half the appeal of liberalism, isn't it? Because they go, we know you haven't got time. We'll form all your opinions for you, and we'll just hand them to you. So you don't have to think.
Well, but I mean that's the problem with a lot of the church in general. Period, is not thinking. And again, that's why we're not there, because I can think for myself, and even if it my opinions may change or they may evolve in some way. Either way, whether it be right or left, I'm just not going to be told what to believe.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I'm definitely decided on, and there's some things that I'll have an open mind about. I still process a lot of the gay marriage stuff. And I'm just at a stance right now.
You're
where
not unquestioningly supportive.
No, I'm very like, I'm of the mindset of like, hey, marriage is tough, man. Let them join, and
they can suffer too.
Yeah, let them suffer too. I hope my wife doesn't hear this podcast. But no, I say that jokingly, but I mean,
he loves you. He loves you.
Yeah. No, I definitely do. I've been married a long time, but it's there's just some things in my mind, I'm like, you see this as a parent too. It's like everything, your kid comes to you with an issue and they want something. And it's not, you don't immediately have to make a decision. And I've learned this, especially with the 16-year-old, and it's a whole alpha male power struggle thing. He'll come up to me with something and I'm just like, well, we'll see. We'll talk about it. and that's kind of like he's like, well, what's your answer? And I'm like, I don't have an answer. I told you we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it another time. And I don't know if I'm escaping the issue or, but I'm making that parallel in that in some areas of Christianity, that's where I'm at. And it's like, I just don't know, because I've been told one thing for so long, whatever that view might be. It can even be the egalitarianism, women's roles in the church. I've been taught one thing for so long that now I just want to spend some time to hear what somebody else has to say. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
No, look, I can understand that completely, and I think this is probably a good place to wind down, because this is what I want to encourage people to think about. Is like I say, I want to encourage people to go, hey, you're not homophobic, you're not a racist, you're not a sexist. You're in process. You're thinking about these things. You're a decent human being, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's kind of where I want to sort of leave things, because honestly, I think this is kind of what we touched on. I think it's a good place to end, and you're welcome to leave some closing thoughts, I suppose. But I just want to create some space in this detox series, because I want to go, hey, let's talk about it. Let's not have the final word. My opinions on these issues may change in the next 6 months. Who knows? So look, John, I just want to say thank you for your time. This has been a very compelling conversation, in my opinion.
Sure.
Do you have any kind of final thoughts for the listeners?
I just appreciate you having me on, Mark. I'm glad we've had this opportunity, and being that the whole thing is detox, I think that it's important to take that time to sometimes just to sit back and not cast judgment on every little thing and that comes up right away, and kind of stay away from the fringe views, I guess, if that makes sense. It's just that I think that's what can create a toxic environment, and so that's kind of what's helped me, and just not making those quick snap judgments.
I would say that a little bit differently, and I think I'll close with this, is don't stay away from the fringe views. Go to the fringe views on both sides and explore them.
That's a good viewpoint.
Because don't end up in the middle, this neutered person with no opinion and no personality.
I can respect that.
Cool, I'll just stop.